Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In the previous video I created this card, really pleased with that. I just love how it turned out, and I started another one. Now you know from the previous video how I created the pumpkin, and what I've done is I've made this one a little bit shorter. It's a little bit shorter than that one, and the edge is a little bit more jagged. That's it. So I just did that by, when I wiped it off, I just wiped it off jaggedy, exactly like I did in this video. I thought there's no point showing you the exact same thing in a video, but what I want to do is show you how you can make it look a little bit different with your florals. And for the life of me, I cannot remember to pick up a piece of copy paper. It's the same every time. So we've got a little bit of sunshine here, a lovely bright day, perfect. And I'm just so pleased with that. I absolutely love that. So I've now got my pumpkin. It obviously needs some more work because we've got to do the shading, etc. But what if we want to make it look a little bit different? So let's grab, very naughty Tracy, you should have grabbed your ink pads beforehand rather than doing what you're doing now, and that's because I can't make my mind up. So I'm just grabbing my little Distress Oxides, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with TE50 on the wild side, mainly because it's got this lovely piece here that I really like. Let's just pull it all out rather than faffing. So I love this one, and because it's a little bit frothy, it's like a good filler. And I always think, I think that's really good value for an A6 stamp set. You get all those stamps. I just love them. I nearly said so again then, because I can't help myself. So let's take a little bit of copy paper, and then we can just go to the, I'm not doing any masking, we'll just go to the edge of there. We want to make it as simple as possible. Excuse me. And as you can see in one of the colour palettes of the mini Distress Oxides, we've got all those beautiful greens, and I'm going to use Bundled Sage. So again, a lovely simple idea. So let's take the Bundled Sage, and I'm just going to ink. Now I tend to ink the whole stamp, even when I'm just using part of it. That's a habit of mine because I know the amount of times I've missed a bit when I've only inked a little bit. So I ink the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this foliage that is a perfect filler. So I'm going to add second generation, and then I'm going to take the Bundled Sage again. Now what's good about this little stamp is we can stamp over the top with a darker colour with a different stamp, and it looks so natural. So let's just bring some further up, and then you can bring some further up. And can you see I'm going straight over the top? It doesn't matter. It's a really good sort of filler stamp, and you can just do second and third generation. It's one of those stamps that's very forgiving. Now, the only thing you need to remember when you're using those oxides on your stamps, just give them a little wipe. Just give those a little wipe. There we go. So I've got my sort of filler from TE50. And I'm then going to take my little mushrooms. Now I've separated them so that you've got different sizes, which for me makes me happy. So I'm going to take my mushroom. And what I'm trying to do is show you that you don't need much product, a few inks, a bit of card. This is watercolour card. Now I'm using this watercolour card because I've got an offer on at the moment on the website. The watercolour card, if you buy a pack of watercolour card, you get a pack of free A4 Pink Frog Super Smooth card, which is perfect for your masterboards as well. So you get that free. You don't have to do anything. It's just automatically added to your basket. Now, my piece of watercolour card is 4 by 6 inches. It tends to be one of my favourite sizes to use. That's just me. So what I'm going to do then is I can put my bundled sage back, and then I can bring in a little bit of brown. So I've got vintage photo, and let's have something a little, you've got black soot here. We've got walnut stain. So I've got sort of a dark and a light. So I like to play with these little ink pads as if they are like my pencils. So I've got the dark. So let's have a look at our stamp. Nothing complicated. You just want to know. So I'm going to add my dark to this edge here on the left hand side. So just like I would colour with pencils, I'm just dabbing a little bit of the dark just onto my mushroom, and then I'm using vintage photo, which is my light. So my dark colour is walnut stain, and I'm using my light colour, which is vintage photo. And then I'm just going to add the vintage photo, and I'm just blending the vintage photo into the colour I can't remember, walnut stain, and I'm going to forget it every time. And then I'm going to come back and just add a little bit of walnut stain. So I'm colouring the stamp with my ink pads. So I'm doing nothing overly complicated. And then I'm going to add a little mushroom. Let's add it around about there. Now you can see I haven't done any colouring, but because I'm using this watercolour card, I'm going to be able to move the colour if I wish. But I'm sorry, look at that. Look at the colouring on the mushroom. I've already got dark and light, and all I've done is touch the stamp with a tiny little ink pad. You can't get easier colouring than that. So I've then got that mushroom. Now, it can be a little bit taller as well, so we'll add one a little bit taller because I'm just having far too much fun. So I'm going to take the dark colour, dab that, which is much easier with these smaller ink pads. So now I'm colouring on the stamp. Then with the vintage photo, just add my vintage photo, and then go back to my walnut stain and bring in a little bit of that darker edge again. Simplest colouring ever. And then we can touch that with a bit of water because we've got that watercolour card. So let's have this a little bit taller. I'm sorry, but you've got shade, light. Look at that. Just, I love it. Absolutely love it. Doesn't take much to make me happy. So then let's just give that a wipe, and just remember, give your stamp a little bit of a wipe. Now, so that we've got some sort of contrast, if you look at, she says, because these stupid nails, they are my nails, but they're so long. On this stamp set, you can see we can get contrast now because I've got the same mushroom in a little tiny stamp. Oh, that does bring me joy. So let's take that little teeny weeny stamp, and you've guessed it, I'm going to colour it in exactly the same way. So taking the walnut stain, a little bit of dark, and then light. Now you could do this with 3 colours, and then you get your dark, medium and light. Look just like you do with pencils. So just tapping this with this little ink pad with my teeny weeny stamps. And then I'm going to take this little mushroom. And look at this, even the little one has got shade and dark. Just love that. Oh, it does make me happy. Sometimes simple is all you need. Then I'm going to repeat that. Now, I like the 3. I like the 3. You could even, mind you, I'm going to have other, no, I'm going to do another one because I'm now addicted to it. So I'm then going to take walnut stain. Then I'm going to take vintage photo. Just dab my vintage photo and then come back to the walnut stain. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this one much lower, just so it's peering out of that pot. Again, I've got that dark and light. Oh, I'm loving these mushrooms. Let me show you what I have at the moment. Can you see? Just beautiful. Absolutely love that. And I could still go over with that foliage stamp and it wouldn't affect anything too much because it's very light and frothy. So let's place this back. So we've got vintage photo and then we've got walnut stain. So let's bring my little tin in. Take the vintage photo and the walnut stain. And then I want to add a little flower. And I'm going to use my sunflower again. But this time, I'm just going to use the sunflower. Now, I'm going to use, which one am I going to use? I'm going to use the smaller sunflower. So let's use that smaller sunflower. Again, the advantage of having different sizes on that stamp set. So you can see, if I go and put the line on, I'd need to mask off the mushrooms. Forget that, we're not masking off. We want it simple. So let's grab a little acrylic block. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go back to my stamp sets. And in fact, do you like the person that changes all the time? No, we'll use this one. Do I? Yeah. This time I'm going to take my colour schemes and I've got paint on my desk. So I'm going to use lumberjack plaid. So I'm going to take the lumberjack plaid and I'm colouring directly on the stamp. So there's my lumberjack plaid. And you can see I've not added water. Lumberjack plaid. Then we want rusty hinge. Let's have a little bit of rusty hinge. So I'm colouring directly on the stamp. And then I'm going to use mustard seed. So I've got light, medium, dark. And you can see I'm only doing the flower head. I'll draw my own stem in because then I don't have to mask off. So let's just add a little bit of that orange again. And I'm not watering or anything like that. And I'm just going to add my floral at the top there. There we go. I've got the floral on there. No stem because we'll add our stems ourselves. So I want one a bit shorter. So I'm going to come in, same colours. Lumberjack plaid, rusty hinge, and mustard seed. And then I'm going to add another floral just here. There we go. So I've got my other floral here. So I don't want an even number, so I've got 6 there, so I'm going to add one more. So I'm going to take the lumberjack plaid, rusty hinge, and mustard seed. Now you're not going to get easier than that, just dabbing it with your ink pad. Let's have this one around about there. There we go. So just give that stamp a little bit of a wipe. So you're just creating your composition. So that's the poppy stamp from TE 39. And then I'm going to come back to a myriad of designs just for this ivy. Where have you gone? There you go. This is a lovely long stamp, and I can use just parts of it if I wish. So I'm going to take my black ink, which I don't have out, which means that I'm bound to pick up the wrong ink. So let's move this one here, and then I'm not going to pick up the wrong ink. So I'm going to take my black ink, and I'm going to ink up those first 3 leaves. I nearly said poppies then. Those first 3 leaves. And I'm going to faff, and I'm going to add some of the leaves there, like so. Oh, it does make a difference, that does. Then I'm going to just wipe this leaf here. Just give that a wipe. And then I'll just dab that with my hand, just so that that's got no moisture on. And then I'm just going to take the 2 ivy leaves and just sort of wipe your finger over just in case. There you go. And then I'm going to add these 2 leaves just there. Like so. There you go. Just look, you see, we've obviously got to add definition and everything else. So let's place that back. I'm then going to take my lovely little bird, which is from a myriad of designs, TE44. Now I want my stamps to not just be seasonal. I want you to be able to do lots with them. So let's take, there we go. Let's take our little birdie, and we're going to stand him on our pumpkin, which is now a little vase for our florals. And then we've got our little bird on there. Now, I want to sort of ground the little bird somewhat. So, shall we take the other bird as well and put it on the other side? So I'm going to take the bird facing the other way. And let's add the bird so he's got a little friend on this one. And I think I'm going to place this little bird just here. Just looking at his friend. And look how I've stamped really easily on the watercolour card. So he's got a friend, and obviously they're just floating at the moment. So I'm going to take the ivy again, and I'm just going to take those 2 again, those 2 pieces of ivy again. And just so the bird looks like it's connected, it's part of the design, I am going to faff. There we go. Just so that we've got the foliage in there and it's part of it. I'm then going to take the ivy again, just in black, and I'm going to ground my little bird with a little bit of ivy as well. So you're just making this card look a little bit different. So now my little bird looks like it's part of the arrangement. So let's just... So then we need to do a little bit of work. So nothing there is complicated. The only thing we've done is stamp and create a scene with our stamps, which is lovely. So we're then going to... Let's put these back because then we haven't got all these lying around. Then I want to bring in my vintage photo as well. So let's put that on the top. I'm going to use that vintage photo. So you're making your card look a bit different than the previous card, but you're using the same idea. What's the bet in my brush isn't clean? Oh, it's not bad, not bad. We haven't got any kitchen roll out. Now, kitchen roll's my best friend when I'm using any water techniques, just because I can dab off any of the extra moisture if I've got too much. And then what I'm going to do is I've got that watercolour card, and because I've got that watercolour card, I can just use a little teeny weeny bit of water and just blend that out. So you're just blending your colour out with the tiniest, teeny weeniest bit of water. And because you've got a quality watercolour card and you've got your distress oxides, you've already added your dark to light. And because you've got that watercolour card, the tiniest bit of water, and you can drag the colour out just so you've got that no line colouring. And obviously we can add a little bit more dimension as well. So just blending the colour out. Now if you wanted to keep it really simple, of course you can just leave it like that, just so that you've got those colours on there. But you know me by now. You know that I want to bring in a little bit more definition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Villainous Potion. I keep going to put the Villainous Potion on my copier paper. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Villainous Potion. And you know now from the previous video, I tended to just use a little tiny bit of water, and I picked up that Villainous Potion, and it was just to add a little bit of depth to the poppy, just to give that a little bit of depth. So I'm just giving a little bit of depth with a fine brush. I'm just touching the centre just so that it's got that little bit. I'm going to lift this up so you can see exactly what I have done, and you'll be able to see that it's nothing complicated at all. So I'm just going to lift this up so you can see. We've got a bit of debris there. Just so you can see, I'm just adding a little touch of that Villainous Potion to give me a little bit more depth to my flower, but I'm not using loads of water. So I'm not taking loads of that water, I'm just touching it with a little bit of that water. Nothing too much, just to give a little bit of definition, especially with doing the no line colouring. So I'm just coming in with that purpley colour just to give it a little bit more definition. And again, I still haven't added any more water. I'm using that round brush which holds enough moisture just to give me a little touch of water, just to give that some definition. Now when you've used the Villainous Potion, you need to make sure that your brush is clean, particularly if you go back to an orange colour, because you really don't want to create mud. So just be mindful of that. I'm then going to take my Lumberjack Plaid, which is my next darkest colour. And you could do this if you were outside or you were at a friend's, because everything's small. And can you see how much moisture I've taken off there? Pick a little bit more of that pigment up. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more of that red. And if you think, oh, it's running away with me a bit, just tap your kitchen towel, just so that it doesn't run away with you. And I'm using that Distress Oxide, That's my pigment. And I'm just gently adding a little bit more of that lumberjack plaid. And that lumberjack plaid I'm then blending into the darkness of the purple. But I'm not sort of washing the purple out. We can still see that purple. And I'm not washing it out, I'm just picking up the pigment just to give it a little bit more definition. And the only thing I'm doing is using my Distress Oxides. I'm then going to come in with the Rusty Hinge. And I know I'm probably irritating you by putting the ink pads back. It's just so I've got a little bit more space, that's all. So I'm just going to grab the Rusty Hinge and I'm going to add, and that's running away with me. Can you see how much moisture's on there? So pick up a little bit more of that strong pigment. There we go. Just so that we've got a little bit more depth. So just pick up the pigment every time you run out of a little bit of the pigment. So now I'm adding a little bit more vibrancy to the poppy. Just adding a little bit more vibrancy to that. Then we'll just rinse that out and then I will come to the yellow. So let's just mop that up and then we'll come to the yellow, which is our mustard seed. So we'll take our mustard seed. And the mustard seed is going to give me the vibrancy. I may even have, yeah, I've even got enough moisture in there. Look how much moisture's in that brush. I don't need that much. Let's pick up that pigment. I don't want the watered down pigment. I want to make sure that I get a good, neat pigment. And then I'm just going to come in and just touch a little bit more with that mustard seed, just so that it's got a little bit more depth with the mustard seed. But we've got that no line colouring, which works beautifully. Just bringing in a little bit of that mustard seed, which brings in a lovely bit of that vibrancy. I'm then going to clean my brush. Can you see it's got all that pigment in there? So let's just clean it a little bit more. You can see how much pigment is in that brush. It's amazing. I'm then going to grab the walnut stain, or maybe even a bit. Let's grab a little bit of black soot. So I'm going to grab a little bit of black soot. And I only need the tiniest amount. So I'm going to make sure there's not too much moisture on that brush. And then I'm going to come in, and because I've got that watercolour card, everything moves beautifully. And I'm just going to add a little tiny little bit of black to that edge. I'm going to take off that black then, and then I'm just going to touch the Distress Oxide with a tiny bit of moisture and just blend that out. So that's lovely. So now we need to add some stems. So I'm just going to grab a brown pencil. Now it can be a brown pen if you've got a brown pen, a brown pencil, whatever you've got. I'm just going to use a Prismacolor, and I'm just going to pick a brown up. And of course, it's always the last one you go for. And I'm just going to pick, what's this? That's a warm grey. That's really brown, Tracy. No. Where's the dark? Oh, I'm on the wrong one, that's why. Let's grab this one. So I'm just going to grab my chocolate, PC1082. And then I'm just going to add my own stems. Now, it's just so the stem appears there. You're not doing anything technical. Look, I'm just scribbling a line. We don't need to do anything more complicated than that. There we go. Lovely. You've just got the line, and I preferred that just to having the black. Okay, So what I'm going to do then is, believe it or not, I'm going to take TE50 and I'm going to take this little tree here. I'm going to grab my little tree. And you're like, what? So take the little tree. Do you like the copier paper that I now need to use has now got everything on it? Wet, everything. Luckily, I only want that bit there. Okay. Going to come here, tree. Going to take the little tree and then I just want, see, now I need to put some of these back because they just get in the way then. Let's take this one, just put these back. And then I'm going to take crushed olive. I'm going to take a little bit of crushed olive. I'm going to just use the end of the, well, I'm going to do more than the end of the tree because it's just a bit easier. And what I'm going to do is go down here and I'm just going to add some sort of grassy bits, just so it fills out my pot just a little bit more. So I'm using a lighter colour so I can do second, third, whatever generations I wish. So I'm just using the crushed olive and I'm just giving it a little bit more definition. I'll lift this up so you can understand why I'm doing that. And the only thing I've done is use a bit of water and ink pads. I've done nothing complicated. So let's just, and because I'm using that lighter colour, it's very sort of forgiving. Third, fourth, fifth generation stamping. And you'll see in a minute that it sort of fills out the actual area. Just so that it just looks fuller, if that makes sense. Let's just add a little bit there. Let's add a little bit here. So it just sort of fills that out. I'm going to show you. Can you see how it fills out my pot just with a little bit of the foliage? It just works really nicely. I'm then going to then give this, ground the whole thing just so that it pops a little bit more. And we did that in grey last time. I'm not going to do it in grey this time. I'm going to do it in my vintage photo because you want it to look a little bit different. So still got a little bit of ink on there. So let's just add, there we go. Just wipe that off. Brown, that's it, I've got it in my hand. So I'm going to take my vintage photo, going to take some water, and we've got that beautiful watercolour card. So I'm going to add some moisture first. So let's grab, now I've used oxides everywhere. Yes, we're aware of that. So if you touch a little bit of the oxide, don't panic too much. So I'm adding the water this time. Last time I didn't add water first. I'm adding it first this time so that that card is already wet. Let's grab a little bit more moisture. And you can see my card is not buckling. Another advantage of watercolour card. I'm now going to pick up my pigment, which is the vintage photo. And I'm just going to just add the vintage photo just around. Now it instantly starts moving because you've already got that moisture on there. And if you found in the previous method that you found it, you get too many lines, then do it this way. Simple way just to add the colour. And you can see nothing technical here. Let's grab some more water. You can then take water then that is tinted and just take your sort of wash of water. Make sure that you put some of that pigment down here. Just so that it looks more realistic. There we go. And it doesn't matter if some of your other colour bleeds, because it looks more artistic. It makes us look fab. It makes us look like I'm, you know, I'm better than I am. So that moves then. And it's up to you how often you keep adding the water. You can still move it. But because that moisture's on there now, I can come in with my vintage photo, pick up that neat pigment. Now the moisture's still on there, so that is still going to move. But I can bring in a little bit darker. And it'll still continue to wick out. So just picking up that pigment again, because I just want it a little bit darker, just around the pot. And I can just, because the moisture's already down, look how easy that is. Just so easy. And you can still come in and add a little bit darkness wherever you want. Okay. I'm now going to give that a little bit of a dry. Whoops. By giving that a dry means that I can go in with my Inktense pencil and add a little bit more depth. The watercolour card doesn't break down. It's fantastic. It's just, and trust me, I have chucked water at this. But I'm just now making sure that the whole card is dry. And then I can come in, make sure you can see, with my Inktense. And just add a tiny bit of water. Now I'm using an Inktense grey. I'm using that round brush just to give it a little bit more depth. So I'm using a quality watercolour card, a round brush that gives me that depth, which works really nicely. Just gives that a little bit more depth to your design, just so that you can see that. Just lovely. Then we're going to grab the poppy stamp. Goodness knows where that is now. I've had that. Oh, it's up here. And we've got that text again. Do you remember the text from the previous card? So we'll take the text. I used it on with my fingers last time. I'm going to use it on the acrylic block this time. So I'm trying to give you lots of ideas each time. Now, with the previous one, I used a permanent ink pad. I used Morning Mist. If I use Oxide for this, I know I've dried the card, but there's still moisture in there. So that text will be a bit sort of softer. So let's add, this is the vintage photo. So I'm adding it with the vintage photo. Now I know there's a little bit of moisture in that card. That's absolutely fine. Now, if you don't like using your stamp with your fingers, you can just press little parts of your acrylic block just so that you get the same kind of effect. Everybody likes different things, different methods, different ways. So I can just press this part of the acrylic block. I can just press that part of the acrylic block. I'm then going to take, no, it's that side, isn't it? I'm going to add a little bit of text here and a little bit of text there, just so that it's on my pumpkin. Makes it look a little bit more natural. Let's add a little bit there. And then I'm going to extend the stamping just up here, like so. And let's add a little bit at the top, just so it's a little bit more uneven. There we go. Just so we've got that little bit of stamping again. Just give your stamp a little bit of a clean. So that's from the poppy stamp. And then let's just, what I'm going to do is just go one mist of water, just one mist of water, just to sort of diffuse that text with just a tiny bit of moisture. Just softens it a little bit. And then going to give that a dry. So just give that a dry. I'm then going to use my Posca pen. So let's use the Posca pen. And just add our splatters, and then I'm just going to give that a quick dry, because obviously the oxide is going to affect that Posca pen. So I'm just giving that a dry. Obviously we have our bleed proof that we can use that I've also got on my desk from the previous card. But what I'm trying to show you is once you've got an idea, it's brilliant because you've got that idea. You can then just sort of add pretend flowers. And I know you're thinking, pardon? So I can take my yellow Posca pen and I can just add, especially if your yellow Posca pen actually works. Let's give that a shake. My yellow Posca pen is very well used. So I can come in and I can just pretend these are some yellow florals. You might not see it too much, but I know it's there. Now, if that isn't enough for you, let's get another Posca pen. I can then come in. Let's grab this. Let's grab like a deep red. And then you can just add some really tiny dots. Everything I've done, anybody can achieve, anybody. It's all very, very simple. So nothing complicated for anybody. I'm then going to add the wording. So let's have a look now. On TE50, we've got the word natural, and I think that's just enough. I don't need anything too over the top. Just a little word to add to our project. And I use the little words quite a lot. So I'm going to add that here. Just that little word, nothing else from TE50. And then just to make sure. Now with your Inktense pencils, once you have dried that Inktense pencil, it is permanent. There's no moisture on there at all. So once you dry that Inktense pencil, it is permanent. But now we've got a little bit of definition. Let's take off the excess. And because I've got that watercolour card, I can just soften that. Wonderful. So let's just make sure we've got that. There we go. Make sure that's clean. Now what I want to do is I want to use my Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof. And then I'm just going to pick a little bit of the white up, just so that I can add a little bit of white here and there. I've even added the dot on the mushroom for you. But I think we need a little bit of water, Tracy. I am a big fan of these round brushes because they do hold moisture quite nicely. So I'm just bringing in a little bit of that white. And you can see I've left you the white area on the mushroom as well, just so that you can... I'm working in very small amounts because I don't want anything too overpowering. So I'm just adding... I'll do the centre of the flower shortly. So I'm just adding, let's pick up a little bit more, that's pathetic. So I'm just going to add a little, just a few sort of touches of that white, and I'm really doing it very, very gently. Not too much, just very gently. And it's entirely up to you how much you play with your paints. The problem with me is it's knowing when to stop. I could play for ages. So I'm just bringing a little bit of white just down my stems, just so that you can see the stem. So let's just bring a little bit of white. Honestly, I love doing this bit because everything starts to pop, and it's just lovely. I'm just adding the smallest amount of white just to a little bit of the ivy. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to add a little bit to the stems. It's funny how that little bit, it just brings the design to life. And I know you're probably thinking, she's stark raving mad, that woman. I mean, I am anyway, but let's place that back now. And I'm just going to clean my brush because when it has this white on, it's so pigmented. Look at that. And I've used the tiniest a bit of white. So let's just clean that, because anything then I use on that will just be diluted. I'm then going to take my black Posca, and I'm just going to add a few. Now this is the biggest black Posca known to man. Where's the one I used yesterday? It's like, that's like looking for a needle in a haystack. What did I do with the black Posca that I used yesterday? Well, Tracy, if you put them in the same place, you'd find them. Tell you what, let's use a micron pen, and let's just put the black in that way. So I'm just adding a few black dots just to the centre of that poppy, just to give it a little bit more dimension. Okay, and then like I did yesterday, I'm going to come in with the white. You should see my desk. It really is just horrendous. And then I'm going to sort of add white dots in between, just to give it a little bit more depth. There we go. Yes, Tracy, stop placing the white. Can't help it. We didn't put any white in here, did we? So really you want to add some touches of lightness to your pumpkin. This is going to be very light because it'll take on some of that oxide colour, but it still gives that lightness. Okay, so now we're going to add this to our black mat. So this is 4 by 6, black mat 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. And I haven't topped my bottle up. And again, works every time. So I'm going to add this to my lovely black mat. I'm just going to pick that up because I find it far easier. And then just, that's it. I can move it a little bit, and then when I've got it in the place I want it to, I can just press it on the back just to make sure that that's got a good contact just on there. Then I'm going to add that to a 5 by 7 card blank. Add that to a 5 by 7 card blank. And what you've done, from the same concept as yesterday's video, but you've created a different project, which is part of the fun. Putting it on the card straight is obviously another good idea. Sorry, I can't not have it on the card straight. And if you find you struggle to get it straight, stand up. Makes a massive difference. Absolutely massive difference. There we go. That's better. Then we'll just clean the end of the tip there. And I can just place this back. Leave my finger there. And then I'm going to bring in the cards for you. So this is our card today, and this was yesterday's card. So it's just wonderful how you can get a different look if you play around. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll give that a go. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.